Welcome to another edition of the Pillars of Progress podcast from MCL Construction. I'm Travis Justice. You know, one of my favorite parts about this show is meeting people who want to change the world and the communities they live in. And today's guest is doing exactly that right here in Nebraska. I first met Marc Maguire at a networking event, and within 5 minutes of our conversation, I knew his story needed to be told. You see, Marc is one of the founders of Bison Biocomposites, a startup born out of research at the University of Nebraska that's using industrial hemp to create carbon-negative insulation materials for both residential and commercial construction. It's a remarkable example of innovation that bridges agriculture and construction, proving that progress doesn't come just from new technology. It comes from rethinking the materials we build with. So today we're talking about how hemp could change the way we design, build, and think about sustainability. Marc, this is interesting because you and I have only met once before, and it was at a DLR outing, and we struck up a conversation, and I was like, this is a good podcast, and we're talking about Bison Biocomposites. I want to get that right. I had to look back and see, make sure I pronounced it right.
It's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful. But you started telling me about it. First of all, what is Bison Biocomposites?
Well, it's a company we created using intellectual property that we developed at University of Nebraska. And so we make primarily hemp-based, industrial hemp-based, not that kind of hemp. But we make hemp-based composites, mostly as insulation materials. Right now, we've got a series of products that we produce.
So you bring up hemp, because I think a lot of people go, hemp, oh my goodness. But hemp's used in a lot of things. I think the first thing I saw it in was like soap. But you talk about industrial hemp. I guess let's go into that. What's the difference between industrial hemp, and I think we know what the other type of hemp is, but what is industrial hemp?
Well, so industrial hemp, and I'm not a farmer. I don't do a whole lot on the agricultural side, but industrial hemp is a product that farmers can grow, that they produce seed that they can feed to animals. They produce fiber that could be used for clothing or rope or other textiles. And it produces this woody core of the material, or of the plant, and that it's kind of like it looks and feels a little bit like balsa wood, maybe a little bit lighter. And Bison Biocomposites, really, we use two of those products. We don't really use the seed product, but what we're talking about is primarily we use that woody core to make our flagship products. And it's really light, insulating, and so it does a great job of insulating houses and commercial construction.
So where did you come up with the idea to go, you know what, hemp would be really good for insulation? And we're going to get into a lot of stuff, but I mean, when did that just pop into your brain?
So hemp was only legalized for growing again in 2018. And so I think that was with the Farm Bill back then. And nobody really knew what to do with it. Like I got kind of involved because as a professor at the university, my job is to go find new and exciting things. And so legalization of hemp is a little bit exciting, sort of, I guess. And so I said, what can I do to help? So I'm a structural engineer and concrete materials engineer. And so at first I said, why don't I use this material to make a structural hemp block? Because, they've been using hemp as an insulation material in Europe for many, many years and elsewhere. They've been using hemp as a building material for thousands of years. I mean, there's a temple, I think it's in India. I could be wrong on the location, but they used hemp, and you can actually see it in their mortars. They used hemp fibers, and those hemp fibers are still intact. They used hemp in some structures in France that are, again, they're still intact and weathering just fine. And so it wasn't really my idea to use it as an insulation material. It's been around for a long time. We just weren't allowed to do anything with it in the United States. And so once it was legalized, I kind of got involved and said, structural block, like I said. But then I said, you know what? There's other products I can that have a lower threshold for use, right? So structural products are kind of hard to get to market because of the life safety concerns with structural things. And I said, well, why don't I solve some of the problems with implementing hemp as insulation so that we can break into the market a little bit faster.
So what are the advantages of using hemp? And when we talk about construction and construction products, I wouldn't say construction is a very sustainable business. I mean, a sustainable product. Also, you're talking carbon emissions. What are the advantages of using hemp as an insulation?
Sure. There's a lot of advantages. So you mentioned carbon. It sequesters carbon during the growing process. The industrial hemp plant has a really well-developed taproot system, and a lot of that carbon gets sequestered underground. Also, the biomass itself sequesters carbon. If we can arrest its degradation over time, right, eventually it'll decompose. But if we can arrest its decomposition by putting it in, like our proprietary binder, for instance, it will last longer, and it'll shift that carbon from going into the atmosphere from the degradation process to later. And like I mentioned, that Indian temple and those abutments in France, well, those have been around a long time. You can still see it. They haven't degraded. And so we have an opportunity with this material to be a carbon negative material and really believe that we are sequestering carbon. It's not some smokescreen. The other advantages are, our insulation material, unlike other rigid insulation type materials, think like EPS, XPS, those are great products. I'm not disparaging those products, but we are a non-petroleum product, right? We don't have VOCs. We are generally fire resistant, and pests don't want to eat it. And we're a little bit heavier, and you might think, that's not really great to be a lot heavier. But that additional mass gives us what's called thermal inertia, and that resists the temperature change a little bit better than a super light rigid insulation or a blanket insulation that you're familiar with.
So does this insulation, does it come in like, like we see the Corning insulation, or you see the styrofoam wall? How does the insulation installed, and is it more for residential use? Is it used for commercial use? What are the uses here for your insulation?
So great questions. If you can imagine all the things that other insulations can do, we can do that too. Okay, it's not really special or amazing other than the benefits that I already outlined. So we do make a blanket type insulation. We make that out of the fibers, and we hope someday you'll see that on the shelf at Home Depot. We also make we really have two kind of flagship type products. We have the residential side, and then we have the commercial side. So we can do both. Generally, commercial construction is fast paced. It's not really boutique. It's about doing bigger and better, right? And so for that type of end use, we have a pourable product, right? So you can actually make our carbon negative insulation in the back of a concrete truck, and it will pour out, self-consolidate, fill, and self-level. And it has an insulation value and all the other benefits that you would expect from a typical insulation like an EPS type insulation. And so that's probably our most exciting product. We can use that for residential as well. We're trying to get more people to do it. Right now on the residential side in the hemp insulation space, people are really more interested in kind of the old school way to build these hemp houses. That's not to say that people don't want to change, it's just people don't know about it as much. And so typically what people are doing is what we call it tamp in place. And so they're putting up formwork around the studs in their house and using buckets to kind of shovel in.
That is old school, by the way, using buckets.
It's pretty old school. And then they take a tamp and they are smashing it to consolidate it into place. And it's a really dry mix. So think dry cast concrete or zero slump concrete. It's super, super dry, and it compresses a lot because it's this woody fiber stuff. And so it's kind of labor intensive. I've done it a couple of times. It's not my favorite job in the world. That's why we came up with the flowable version, so that you can do the same thing with the same everything, except you're not tamping it in place and you're not putting all that labor into it. You can get a grout pump, you can feed the grout pump and pump it anywhere in the house. And we're trying to tell people about this and get this out there, because a lot of the cost of what is traditionally called a hemp home right? Where they have extended stud spacing, and then they have this hempcrete is what they often call it, insulation that'll go around those studs, and that's usually maybe like a foot thick. And you can imagine putting that many buckets into place. It's not very fun. And so using that same strategy minus the labor, you can get functionally the same product. And so we are really hoping that will open up this more natural product, more natural insulation product to a wider market.
So the building we're in right now is a precast building, right? So the walls come basically precast. How would your insulation be used in a building like this?
So believe it or not, that's actually our target market. So we are, my team, right? Myself and my president, CEO, and my COO, and team of 5 guys.
The people who want to make money off this.
Yeah. Well, we want to change the world.
Yes.
Right? And so this team is basically comprised of precast concrete industry veterans. I've worked in precast concrete my entire career, and so has most of my team. And so one of the things I'm kind of known for in academic circles is what are called insulated wall panels, right? And if this is a precast building, I don't know for certain, but most precast buildings in our area are insulated wall panel buildings. So those are concrete foam, concrete type structures. And there's different types of those, but generally it's always concrete, foam, concrete. Well, if you visit a precast plant and you see how they build those, they cast one layer of concrete, then they put on rigid insulation with a lot of people, a lot of labor, and they kind of create this puzzle of rigid insulation pieces, and they get that all set down and they get everything on there, then they put their reinforcement over the top of that and pour the next layer. So our goal was to look at that process and say, hey, we can pour that center layer now, and maybe we can reduce the amount of hands required to make that layer. And maybe there's some other efficiencies we could gain by doing that. Maybe we can pull our pre-stressing strands on the top and the bottom at the same time. Maybe there's other processes we can streamline. And so that's what we've done. We've got this insulation layer that we can cast using very little labor, maybe 2 people, instead of 5, 6 people to place all that insulation over the panel. And get all the other benefits of our insulation.
Now, I'm going to use an example because they're just right down the street. That'd be Enterprise Precast, right? A pretty big player in the precast world here in Omaha, and actually in the region.
Yep.
So if I know one thing about the construction industry that I've been in for 15 years now, and it's taken me a while, but they're creatures of habit and they like to work with what works all the time. So when you approach a precaster and propose this, what's their biggest pushback? What's the biggest pushback you get?
So most people don't like to change, right? There's risk associated with change. I'm not saying people are adverse to change. I'm saying that, people see the risk in changing because they can do it their current way without fear of liability because they know they make a good product like Enterprise. But at the same time, they're always looking for ways to save on labor, make all these other improvements, and they don't have a product out there that's carbon negative and could potentially make the entire building carbon negative. That's how carbon negative this insulation layer is. And so when we approach Enterprise or somebody else, we tell them all of the benefits and we say, what do you think? Do you want to try it out? And most of the time, they're very, very interested. We've done test panels across the country. We've got great feedback, and we're still trying to break into the precast market, but I think we've got a couple of options coming online. We've only been in business maybe 6 months, right? This is not,
and that's what's weird. You and I talked at this event, and I'm like, oh my God, this is progress. This is something you don't see in the construction world every single day. So 6 months, you're moving pretty rapidly for 6 months. Would you agree or disagree with that?
I think so. I mean, I don't know much about business, being a university professor and all, but it's been kind of a whirlwind. There's a lot of stuff going on. We get a lot of requests every day. We get requests for product, requests for demos. We go to trade shows, that kind of thing. It's nice to have a big team to help out with that. But timelines on particularly commercial construction in the precast world, can be pretty long, right?
Yes.
Even if we think we've got a couple of jobs coming up, those might not come online for like 3 months, right? So being 6 months old is it's exciting, also stressful at the same time.
That's why you get into a startup, right? I mean, that's part of the thrill of it. You mentioned you're trying to break the precast market. Would the manufacturers be the one to go to, or even the design firms who really push sustainability a lot, and they can say, "Hey, spec this within the precast wall"?
Well, so that's a really great question. So, in the AEC community, right, we have...
And he's saying architects, engineers, and contractors.
Absolutely.
Get clear those acronyms up.
Sorry, yeah, too much jargon. We have the AEC group, but we also have the owners, right? So you start talking about data centers. Who are the owners of data centers? We've got Meta, we've got Google, we've got
Verizon. I mean,
yeah, everyone's got a data center. The federal government has data centers, and so owners want something like this. We've got contractors and precasters. They want something like this because it saves time, labor, energy, et cetera. And it fits within workflow because we already got concrete trucks coming to site, right? And we've got engineers who, well, we can handle anything, and we like interesting. I think they're probably the hardest ones to get on board, most resistant to change, and I say that as a structural engineer. And then we've got the architects. So the architects absolutely love new things. They love the language of materials. They love all these insert fancy word, right? But they're looking for environmental solutions that don't exist. And now they kind of do, and we can start leveraging all the different parts of that group so we can go to the owners and say, hey, look what we can do. And we keep going to each of these groups, and I think we're going to get the pull through into the industry.
I'm going to make a statement here because I asked him this when we first met, and I go, what's your biggest problem when it comes to this? And many would think would be convincing the precasters or convincing people. But not only is there an opportunity in this business, but there's an opportunity for farmers here because hemp is your biggest problem in getting enough of it, correct?
That's true. So, I mean, right now we're fine. I think we can meet supply, right? But if you think about the amount of insulation that's used, the numbers are astronomical. I don't have them in my head. They're so big, right? So like if we were to start converting lots and lots of jobs, we need to start thinking about supply chain. And that means we need to think about where are we growing this material? Are we growing it near our site so we can be economical and continue to think about things sustainably and not shipping material from Nebraska to New York or New Jersey? Are we thinking about how many acres farmers are going to be able to pump out? So we can certainly supply the demand with hemp, but there's a real chicken and egg situation, right? So if, let's say, things take off and we start winning all these data center jobs, well, that means we need ahead of time. I think it's a 90-day growing season, maybe a little bit less. So we have to have hemp to get a job, right? And so some of what we're doing is helping develop that supply chain so that we can grow more hemp. That hemp needs to be processed, so there needs to be processors involved. And so there's a lot of links to that chain that we want to continue to develop.
So, I mean, can hemp store to where you can build up a backlog of material? I mean, what I didn't know if there was anything with the storage of it that would...
Sure. Yeah, it can certainly be stored. You probably don't want to store it too long outside, but I know a lot of the material on the market right now has been stored for a significant amount of time. When 2018 happened and farmers were allowed to start growing this, I think everybody jumped in with not everybody, but a lot of people jumped in with 2 feet, and there may or may not have been enough offtake at the time. One of the biggest markets for hemp hurd, which is that woody core, is animal bedding right now because it's super absorptive. I mean, it is an amazing material in terms of its absorption potential. And so, how much animal bedding can the industry supply? That's really sustaining the industry right now. And so, we want to grow that to include building products, of course. But, there's definitely a chicken and egg situation.
So how much hemp is grown in Nebraska right now? Do you know?
My partners would know the answer to that. I don't know. It's not very much.
Because you want a cash crop, right? I mean, a sure thing would be beans and corn, and you're like, I'm sitting on a bunch of hemp.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be. I'm not the supply chain and farming expert here, but I've heard that farmers growing hemp this year are making significantly more than farmers growing corn this year. So I don't know.
Even if you
can make that decision,
even if you set aside, I don't know how big a farm somebody has, but 1,000, 2,000 acres, if you have something that big, and you always supplement it a little bit, right?
Yep.
That's interesting that there's opportunity out there. Now, a lot of people hear the word sustainable, something new. They're going to think more expensive. Is hemp hurd more expensive than regular insulation?
No, it's actually cheaper. And we don't play the carbon market game. We're not out there trading carbon credits. We're not playing all that, doing all the nonsense, the funny business you might hear from other green products. No, we are cheaper first cost.
So you mentioned the labor intensive maybe for inside a house. Would that change the cost a little bit, just the way it has to be installed? That would where the price increase would come if there was a price increase?
So if we're talking about residential construction is a really interesting animal, right? So I do commercial research and commercial construction, engineering on commercial construction. But on residential construction, especially in a place like Nebraska, there's not a lot of engineering involved. You just do the same thing every day. Master builders will just know what to do, follow the building code and studs on 16-inch centers and, sill plates, top plates, et cetera, right? They just go and do it. And so they have prescriptive requirements for insulation, and our insulation prescriptive requirements, I think, are kind of on the low end, maybe. I don't know. With the new energy codes, maybe they're not too bad. But if you start talking hemp homes, that's a completely different scenario. You don't have the big builders doing hemp homes. You have boutique builders, which maybe have like a 3 to 5 person crew, and that's it. They do high value homes. They're not doing affordable housing. They're not doing anything at scale. And so those homes tend to be at a premium, usually to customers willing to pay that premium, of course. And so there's a lot of dynamics associated with that, but in general, the insulation on those houses isn't really, the cost driver. I mean, you do need a significant amount of insulation, but the big thing is the labor. And if we can hold down that labor using our flowable product, I think that's a win for everybody.
Do you got a patent on this? Because I was just thinking, hemp's a natural product. Is there a patent on this, or can somebody go steal this from you?
They can't steal it. It is patented. The hemp itself is not patented, of course. So the secret sauce is our patented binder, right? So it binds everything together. Not only that, our process for production is also patented. And so realistically, traditionally hempcrete is this product. It's not concrete. People confuse it for concrete. It's not strong enough to really evoke the term concrete.
Okay.
So traditionally they use lime. Lime is a non-proprietary binder. It's also very slow and very weak. And so one of the problems these hemp homes suffer from is the lime. So the costs, lime is cheap itself, but anybody that's ever worked with lime, you mix it up with a little bit of water, and it slowly carbonates. It doesn't hydrate like Portland cement does. And so it takes 2 months to get hard. That's a long time, right? So I said, well, that's one pain point I can fix. And so we developed this proprietary binder, and we're full strength in basically 24 hours. And so you're not waiting on this carbonating process. That carbonation process also creates water, which means it's developing over time water in your wall. And so you need to get it to dry out. Our process dries out much, much faster because we don't have that carbonation chemistry. And so that proprietary binder that we use, that's really our secret sauce. And we have some other things that we do, of course. And there's nothing wrong with the older style construction. But that is one of the bigger pain points with that construction style is the time associated with it. And that's really why there's a cost premium on those houses.
This makes so much sense to me. I can't believe you're not a millionaire within the first 6 months of doing this.
Well, I thought for sure I was going to be, right?
Hey, did you go into that with these grand illusions, like this is going to take off immediately? Then you're like, oh, this is a lot of work.
No, I'm way too pessimistic for that, right?
So have you always been an inventor? I mean, you're a college professor. You mentioned a structural engineer, so you're helping the engineers of tomorrow. But have you always been an inventor?
I don't know. I think maybe. So I worked when I was a master's student here at the University of Nebraska a long time ago. I worked with a professor who was really good at just inventing things. And I don't know, maybe he infected me or something. But, through that process, also, unlike a lot of academics, I've really focused my career around the end users, the engineers, the contractors, the precast industry. I don't really focus on as much fundamental. I focus more on applied. And so, I'm rubbing elbows with, all these people who want right now solutions. And so I've been doing that for so long. It's just kind of natural to come up with right now solutions. And that's kind of what this was.
So what else can be done with hemp? What else can be done with your binder? I mean, is there something beyond insulation that you think can be done with this?
Yeah, I think if you're familiar with flowable fill, which is a geotechnical type product, where, let's say your site has poor soil, right? So you might excavate the soil off the site and you could instead pour, like, typical flowable fill is like a cement slurry that's been foamed. And so they can squirt it out and fill any voided area. They use it a lot in the mining industry and in certain parts of the country for basically any soil type remediation where they might have a soil they don't like. Maybe to increase bearing pressure, to reduce, soil treatment on site or something like that. And so that uses an awful lot of cement, right? And so if you could have a carbon negative product to fill this soil, we're not talking about like a little bit of soil. We're talking about thousands, millions of yards of soil, that kind of thing.
When you hear the word startup, I think, we've gotten into this mindset, well, if you're a startup, you're a tech company. Do you take great satisfaction in that? This is like a real product, right? Everybody's talking about an app or something new you can do tech-wise. You have a real product here. Do you take great satisfaction? And also developing in Nebraska, having it be a Midwest, Nebraska-based company, you take great pride in that?
I certainly do. I'm a Nebraska boy, right? So I grew up in Lincoln, watched the Huskers every day, all that stuff. Your buddy Rob, I told you.
You went to high school with Dr. Rob Zadiska?
Kind of. I was a little bit behind him, but my dad was friends with his dad.
Who worked at the university.
They both worked at the university, yep. And so, I got to... Rob mowed my lawn. That's my claim to fame.
That's a big man out there mowing your yard. I'll tell you that.
And having something like this at the University of Nebraska, it's not. I don't know if it's a personal satisfaction or anything, because we do a lot of really great stuff here. Like, people just don't know it. One of the things that I'm really appreciative of the College of Engineering here at Nebraska is they care about that kind of thing. And they really push entrepreneurship. They push we do really cool things, but we need to do a better job of getting them out there. And so, like I said, we do a lot of things. And we're going to, I take pride in being part of that, for sure. And the other thing is, as part of the Nebraska ecosystem, right? So we are at the intersection between agriculture and construction, both two massive industries here in Nebraska. And so, we're not the traditional technology company. We go out and we have investors, and we've talked about these types of things during investment, trying to get investments. And one of the things we found, and we knew this going in, is the construction industry is a different animal. Like it's very fragmented. You can't vertically integrate as well as you can in, say, like the tech industry. You can't just take over just with pure cash, right? And so we like getting investment for that kind of a situation. It's completely different because you can go in if you've got the Everything app, right? And you put it on your phone and it does all the things, and you can go sell that to some Silicon Valley investor and they'll be like, oh, okay, I can vertically integrate the world and I'll pay you $50 million for 1% or whatever, right? With ours, they can see the value, but they know the construction industry is so fragmented. The agricultural industry in some ways is fragmented, at least in the way the hemp industry is set up right now. And so it's a totally different feel, and investment works differently in the construction space. And so there are challenges associated with that, but at the same time, we really only wanted the right partners to begin with.
And that if you get the right partners, then it's probably easier to grow. 6 months you've been doing this. What's the number one thing you've learned that you didn't expect in starting a business?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I've learned a lot. Be patient, right? Like I can come up with any ideas, right? So I see a problem, I'm compelled to fix that problem. And so I might say, on Monday I want to solve this problem. Then on Tuesday I see something shiny and I want to solve that one, right? So trying to stay focused on one product, 2 products, 3 products instead of 10, 20, 30 products, or getting sales in this area versus getting sales in that area. Like focus is really the thing that's been not a surprise to me, but it's really been more of a something I've had to focus on.
Well, I think by nature, a lot of people don't like to do sales, right? I mean, it's one of those, it's like I like to invent. I know my product's good, but going and asking somebody to buy it's a completely different skill set. You mentioned the university. Are they, obviously you're doing this as a side project, but are they supportive of your inventive ways? And do you take this entrepreneurial spirit into your own classroom and spread it out to your students?
In some ways, to the last point, I do try to. So when I'm as a research professor, I have lots of different types of students, right? I've got undergrads and graduate students. I definitely try to, with my graduate students, who I work with on a daily basis, right? Really, it's an advisor-advisee relationship with them. We do research projects together. We develop IP together, those types of things. And so I think within my research group, there's a really strong focus on that kind of thing, particularly with some students. But at the undergraduate level, it's kind of hard to do much. Engineering as a degree is super intense in terms of like what you have to do. You don't get a lot of options. And so I don't know that I do a very good job at the undergraduate level. But like I think I said earlier, the College of Engineering is super supportive of entrepreneurship. It's super supportive of IP, invention, and also translational research, like getting stuff out to the real world. Our college loves impact and making an impact specifically for Nebraska itself. And I think that's really admirable, right? Like I've been at other institutions where that may or may not have been the case, but they are, I can say, very serious about that.
And I can say, Marc, you are a pillar of progress, and that's why we had you on the Pillar of Progress podcast.
Well, thank you.
Thanks for joining us. If you want to know more about Marc's product, check it out at bisonbiocomposites.com. That's bisonbiocomposites.com. It's pretty fascinating. Lots of stuff on there on how you'll find this is a Nebraska product that's sustainable. And as you said, you're out to change the world. This could change the world.
I think so.
Marc, thanks so much.
All right. Thank you.